Hey everyone, welcome back to Chew the Bible. It's your good friend A.A. Ron. We are down in Mark chapter 8. For those of you all remember, in Mark chapter 6, there's an account of Jesus feeding the 5,000. But here, we're going to read the account of him feeding the 4,000. And we're reading out of the KJV. And this is from the blueletterbible.org. All right, let's get right into it. Mark chapter 8. In those days, the multitude being very great and having nothing to eat, Jesus called his disciples unto him and saith unto them, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. And if I send them away fasting to their own houses, they will faint by the way, for diverse of them came from afar. Now, the fact that he uses 3 days, I think there's some symbolism going on there, but I'll let y'all dive deeper into that on your own. All right, verse 4. And his disciples answered him, From whence can a man satisfy these men with bread here in the wilderness? And he asked them, How many loaves have ye? And they said, 7. All right, so if I remember correctly, in Mark chapter 6, they were in the desert. Y'all go back and read that. And now they're in the wilderness. And then also, I just want to point out, before there was 5 loaves and 2 fish, and now we have 7 loaves. All right, verse 6. And he commanded, he didn't just tell them, he commanded the people to sit down on the ground, and he took the 7 loaves and gave thanks and brake and gave to his disciples to set before them, and they did set them before the people. Interesting. Let's keep going. And they had a few small fishes, and he blessed and commanded to set them also before them. So instead of before it was 5 loaves, 2 fish, and now we have a few small fish. When I think of a few, I've heard like 3 or 4. Definitely less than 10. So now we have 7 loaves of bread and a few fish, or as Tony Evans, he always jokes that it was like a young boy's school lunch that Jesus used to feed. He says something like that. I have to go back and listen to his joke when he tells this story. All right, let's keep going. Verse 8. So they did eat and were filled, and they took up the broken meat that was left 7 baskets. So they were filled. Everybody got a chance to eat. And there was 7 baskets left over. Go back and read Mark 6 and look and see how many baskets were left over of food in the other account. Let's keep going. And they, verse 9, and they that had eaten were about 4,000, and he sent them away. 4,000 people. Before, he fed 5,000, and that was just men. That doesn't even include the women and children. Let's keep going. Verse 10. And straightway he entered into a ship with his disciples, and came into the parts of Dalmanutha. Ooh, it's a mouthful. Keep going. And the Pharisees came forth and began to question with him, seeking of him a sign from heaven, tempting him. Good old Pharisees. We'll read that again, verse 11. And the Pharisees came forth and began to question with him, seeking of him a sign from heaven, tempting him. Verse 12. And he sighed deeply in his spirit, and saith, Why doth this generation seek after a sign? Verily I say unto you, there shall no sign be given unto this generation. Somewhere, I can't remember where it says it. Hold on a second. Be right back. There we go. Matthew 12:39. But he answered and said unto them, An evil and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, and there shall no sign be given to it, but the sign of the prophet Jonas, or Jonah. You know, Jonah was swallowed in the belly of the whale. He was foretelling, many people believe he was foretelling about him. Jesus was telling them about him, foreshadowing him dying on the cross, being buried and in the tomb for 3 days, and then resurrected. So, just like Jonas was in the belly of the whale for 3 days. Hold on a second. Y'all remember when I said take note about how those people had been with Jesus for 3 days and had nothing to eat? Let's keep going. Or we might have to make this a two-parter so I don't rush through it too much. But here we go. Verse 13, and he left them and entered into the ship again, departed to the other side. All right, let's go to verse 14. Now the disciples had forgotten to take bread, neither had they in the ship with them more than one loaf. Come on, y'all. And he charged them, saying, take heed, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the leaven of Herod. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have no bread. And when Jesus knew it, he saith unto them, why reason ye because ye have no bread? Perceive ye not yet, neither understand? Have ye your heart yet hardened? I know for me, I'll be a lot like the disciples. Stuff would just be going over my head and I'd be missing out on things. Let's keep going. Having eyes, see ye not? Having ears, hear ye not? And do ye not remember? When I break the 5 loaves among 5,000, how many baskets full of fragments took ye up? They say unto him, 12. 12. Remember, we just talked about the young lady, the woman who had the issue of blood. Wow. The woman with the issue of blood had been suffering for 12 years. The girl who they thought was dead but was actually sleeping, she was 12 years old. 12 tribes of Israel. 12 represents judgment and God's perfect government. You had 12 disciples. Let's keep going. Go to BibleStudy.org and look up numbers in the Bible. It will send you down some really cool thought trails. All right. And when, verse 20, and when the 7 among 4,000, how many baskets full of fragments took ye up? And they said 7. So when he fed the 5,000, back in Mark chapter 6, there was 12 baskets left over when he fed, and that was the 5 loaves and 2 fish. Then with 7 loaves and a few fish, more than a couple, he fed 4,000, so less people, and they had 7 baskets left over. So in the other situation, there was a double, but in this case, it was equal. Y'all go read some commentaries on that stuff. Some of this stuff, I let it marinate for a while, and I try not to always read other people's commentary because I kind of like forming my own thoughts and opinions about something and just let it marinate and let God speak to me through the word that way. Let's keep going. Verse 21, and he said unto them, how is it that ye do not understand? I will be just like the disciples are like, God, Jesus, this is a lot. What do you expect from me? I barely graduated. They didn't have high school back then. I assume. I don't know what kind of education they had back then. But anyway, what the disciples had. I know that Luke was a physician. He was a doctor. He was the smartest one probably out of all of them. And Peter was always usually sticking his foot in his mouth, but at least willing to come up with some kind of answer. Let's keep going. And he said unto them, how is it that ye do not understand? Verse 22, and he cometh to Bethsaida, and they bring a blind man unto him and besought him to touch him. Interesting that Jesus went right past that and didn't explain further. He just said, we're going to come back to this later. Now we got this blind man. And verse 23, and he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the town. And when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw aught. Now, I don't know about y'all. I don't know about how many of y'all will let some dude just on his hands and rub it in your eye. But hey, it's Jesus, and what else has worked before this? But I don't know. We're out in this regular setting, and some dude comes up to me and tells me he has the gift of healing, and he starts spitting in his hand. I'm like, oh, hold on a second. I thought you were just gonna lay hands on me. I know you're gonna spit on your hand too. Anyway, let's keep going. Verse 24. He looked up and said, I see men as trees walking. After that, he put his hands again upon his eyes and made him look up, and he was restored and saw every man clearly. Now, I also do this podcast, just the audio version. It's much longer. The recording is usually like 30 minutes to an hour. And I was talking about on there, I pointed out, it's interesting that Jesus basically has to put his hands on the man twice. Why is that? I know there's nothing wrong on Jesus' hand, but was there something wrong with the man's faith? I don't know. Y'all go do some research on that. But we're going to break this up and make a part 2. Be right back.